Production for film and television is seismically down in every single state in this nation, with one exception, and that is the state of New Jersey. The state of New Jersey has something like 70 stages right now. So within a couple of years, that's going to go up by another 30. And I don't really think that you pour that much concrete for that kind of passing fancy.
Good thing to keep in mind is that A Birth of a Nation is arguably one of the highest grossing movies of all time. It may have made between $20 and $100 million when it was released. And when you adjust for over 100 years of inflation, that would put it third behind Avatar and Avengers Endgame all time. It was also the first ever movie to be screened in the White House for the president. In this case, New Jersey's Woodrow Wilson.
One of the most significant films of all time, especially for actors, because it really was groundbreaking. It was on the waterfront. So that, it won like 9 Oscars. Elia Kazan, it's shot almost completely in Hoboken with a young Marlon Brando. And just think of all of the people, all of the actors that have come since then that wouldn't have careers again if it wasn't for the fact that that film was made in its sort of like very gritty, realistic style of method acting that just hadn't really happened before. And it was a very like working class story. So it was like, I think that speaks a lot to New Jersey roots as well.
Even a comedian like me knows that New Jersey is America's favorite butt of the joke. But that is all gotta stop. And the Garden State Roots podcast is here to tell you why. Because it turns out, my friends, New Jersey has been a major revolutionary force for 2.5 centuries now. From music, to film, to sports, to tech, and from food to politics. Join me, Justin Williams, to explore Jersey's most revolutionary historical moments and figures over 8 episodes of gutsy game changers and amazing catalysts. Garden State Roots is digging up some stories. The sound you're hearing is the first ever synchronization between sound and image. A film of 2 men dancing to the music of a violin played by director William Dixon. It was shot in Thomas Edison's Black Maria studio in West Orange, New Jersey. A 49 by 18-foot tar paper shack built in 1893 that is arguably the mother of America's multi-billion-dollar movie business. In fact, any movie industry in any country you care to mention. You can still visit this replica today. So forget your Hollywoods and your cons. Cinema was born right here in New Jersey. The truth? You can't handle the truth. So grab your popcorn, turn your phones to silent, and sit back in those red cushioned cinema chairs to learn with me just how New Jersey built Hollywood. Helping me with the task are 2 superstar aficionados on everything film. Adam Nelson, a professor at the New Jersey Film Academy and the publisher of Socko magazine. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Also joining us is Angela Matusik, editor-in-chief of Socko and founder of the Maplewood Film Society.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here, Justin. Thank you.
So as we often do on this series, we're going to start this episode by going as back far as we can into history to see what kind of evidence there is for the audacious claim that New Jersey started the movie-making revolution that changed the world. Going to throw this over to you, Adam and Angela, to start us off. Where are you guys going to take us?
Adam, why don't you bring us over to West Orange, New Jersey?
Yeah, I think there's an amazing lost history in Edison. I teach at the New Jersey Film Academy. The very first thing I ask is, who knows who invented film or where film began? And this is being taught in the state of New Jersey. This is a birthright to the state, and very few can answer that question. For $650, this single camera that was invented, created an $800 million industry just in the state of New Jersey. Forget the culture and the world of economics surrounding it. But the camera, the theater, the cliffhanger, the drive-in, the studio, the language, all of it was made in New Jersey. So Jersey didn't just join the business, Jersey invented it. And then it was silly enough to let it move to California. Maybe it got shanghaied, who knows? They got 100 years of credit for a century of Jersey's work. And I would say that that's not true anymore, that this is round two in the future of film. That is going to be the state of New Jersey.
And Adam, can you unpack a little bit about who invented the camera?
Thomas Edison, who also invented many other things. And a partner of ours, in terms of the magazine that we launched called Socko, a partner of ours is the Edison Foundation. And we're very proud to have that relationship because it not only is it venerable, but I think they don't get enough attention for the work that the legacy that they are here to enamor.
Yeah, so what Adam was talking about was the Black Mariah studio too. So in addition to making the first film camera, though there is some debate among educators about whether or not, it was Edison or some guy in France, but he had the patent and that's what mattered. Um, but the Black Mariah was the first film studio. And, he made it because he had created this thing called the kinescope. And suddenly people wanted to watch moving pictures. He couldn't make stuff fast enough because they didn't have artificial light yet. So he made this like really weird building that kind of looks like a ship and it moved all over the place. Like the ceiling retracts and it pivots on these tracks. And the reason is so they could chase the light, which is a famous thing. Every filmmaker is always like, we got to chase the light, get the light. And it was really their first thing. And that's how they were able to make a bunch of films like, and they were really simple things like a sneeze or a boxing match or a kiss. But that's how it started with the Black Mariah, and then it definitely took off from there, but stayed in New Jersey for a long time. Made a lot of stuff here.
Angela, can you tell us why was it called the Black Mariah?
Well, it had something to do with the way it looked, and I think people thought it looked like this taxi cab that was called the Black Mariah taxi cab. So it's a really strange shape. I think it looks more like a boat, but whatever.
So the Black Mariah studio, it was on tracks?
Yeah, it's like, if you can go visit it today and it still functions, though I think, they're very protective of it, but it essentially is made on like a with wheels and it has a wooden track around it. So you can rotate the whole building, and the roof retracts. It has these windows that let in light as you need it.
I think the original, I could be wrong, but I think the original burned down. I think this is a recreation of it.
Yes, it is. It's true. So the original did burn down, but the new one has been lovingly recreated. So you can definitely go visit. It's at the National Edison Park in West Orange. Check it out.
And Angela, can you tell us a little bit more about the concentration of studios in Fort Lee, New Jersey around that time?
Yeah, essentially, if you want to look at Fort Lee, New Jersey in like the early 1900s, every name that was there are names that are familiar to us now in the Hollywood system. So you had like Fox Studio, Goldwyn, MGM, Paramount, Universal. All the big players were there and they still exist today.
And Fort Lee was a tiny place, remember? I mean, not even 5,000 people lived there in 1910. So it must have felt like the whole population was involved in making movies.
And ironically, and this is what we're writing about in Socko magazine, most of them are coming back and forming studios here again now. So that's what's so wonderful about what's happening. It's not just a celebration of what was, but what's coming in the future. But yeah, there's a lot going on in Fort Lee. And, I think like D.W. Griffith filmed there. He's considered like the father of cinema by many. And like, there's like this legacy that started in New Jersey, that just goes far beyond Edison. Like it started with him, but then it continued to like techniques and storytelling as well.
Angela, I just want to take a minute to kind of plunge a little bit more into the background of D.W. Griffith. What's more context for him in his career?
Well, D.W. Griffith is considered by many like the grandfather of modern cinema. And that's mostly because he made a film called Birth of a Nation, which was like the most successful, ambitious, crazy film ever made. It was based on a book called The Klansman. It's, highly controversial, has, really difficult for modern people to watch, because of the way it depicts race, shortly after the Civil War in America. Um, but he's an interesting character. And before he became a director, he was an actor. And so he made a lot of his films as an actor in Fort Lee, New Jersey. There's one called Escape from an Eagle's Nest. You can catch it on YouTube, and it's like this action film about a baby that's like literally snatched from from its front porch, and it goes like off into the Palisades in New Jersey, and it eagles nest. It's really funny. Um, and he made Birth of a Nation in California. So in some ways, you could say that he was the first person to sort of start the flow of filmmaking from New Jersey to California. And they did that for a lot of reasons, mostly because of the weather, but there were other political reasons as well.
I think a good thing to keep in mind is that A Birth of a Nation is arguably one of the highest grossing movies of all time. It may have made between 20 and $100 million when it was released. And when you adjust for over 100 years of inflation, that would put it third behind Avatar and Avengers Endgame all time. It was also the first ever movie to be screened in the White House for the president. In this case, New Jersey's Woodrow Wilson. Who are some other New Jersey, trailblazers of film during this time?
Well, if we're talking about D.W. Griffith and, the problems of Birth of a Nation, we should really talk about, the Black filmmaker Oscar Micheaux. He made a ton of films, long into for decades. And he was a director that just made films about life, and the people in the films happened to be Black. So it was really radical, way ahead of his time. And people don't really talk about him, but it was like a very, dramatic thing for a filmmaker just to be telling stories that happen to have an all Black cast.
Yeah, the NAACP calls the film groundbreaking, which ticks the revolutionary box for me. Anyone else like Oscar Micheaux?
Alice Guy, who we say was this revolutionary female director, she made a film as well, with an all black cast called A Fool and His Money. It wasn't intended to have an all black cast, but she wanted it to be mixed race. And what happened was the white actors refused to show up to work. So she was like, "Okay, fine, I'll just make it all with black people." And it's not about race either. It's a comedy about class and sort of like what money can do for you. So it's also was kind of radical to just make a film that just happened to be Black people. It wasn't about race relations.
Yeah, Angela, and I think what's really interesting is like Oscar Micheaux's revolutionary because it's black people being played by black actors as opposed to in Birth of a Nation, right?
Right. Well, and not just Birth of a Nation, but throughout so many early films, as like Black people were always shown in like subservient roles or caricatures. They didn't have real, they weren't considered anything besides just like side plot. But the fact of the matter is there were people doing these radical things like Oscar Micheaux that people don't know about. And he was not from New Jersey, but he made a lot of films here in New Jersey, even after a lot of the production moved out west.
Yeah, that's such an amazing legacy and a kind of a fun historical. They're kind of counterpoints to each other in an interesting way. Adam, who are some trailblazers from this period that appeal to you?
Well, I mean, after this period, when you start getting into like the Marx Brothers or some of the actual studios that were built in New Jersey, like Champion Studios, like in that period of time, you have this birth of filmmaking that's coming out of New Jersey. These are the only operating film studios in the world. Like these are the only ones that are fully equipped to actually handle the load of a full narrative story. So Lillian Gish, obviously you have that talent, and you have uh, Dorothy Gish, Mary Pickford, Lionel Barrymore. You have a lot of glamour that's being added to cinema, which is something that was absent from the earlier films as well, especially if you're talking about Birth of a Nation.
Let's move the timeline forward a little bit. After the studios moved to the West Coast, uh, how does New Jersey keep continuing to the film industry after World War II?
Well, one of the most significant films, of all time, especially for actors, because it really was groundbreaking, it was On the Waterfront. So that, it won like 9 Oscars. Elia Kazan, it's shot almost completely in Hoboken with a young Marlon Brando. And just in, like think of all of the people, all the actors that have come since then that wouldn't have careers again if it wasn't for the fact that that film was made and it's sort of like very gritty, realistic style of method acting that just hadn't really happened before. And it was a, and it was a very like working class story. So it was like, I think that speaks a lot to New Jersey roots as well. Whereas, Hollywood up until that point, big musicals, lots of glamour. And then you have On the Waterfront, which is like a much more realistic, gritty film about real people, working class people, which I think sort of like embodies a lot of the attitude and spirit of New Jersey that you see.
So not only for the accolades that you mentioned there, I mean, amazing for portraying working class life. Obviously, Marlon Brando gives one of the great performances in the history of film, but also noted, right, that by the Library of Congress as one of the most historically significant films in American history.
But also look at what happened. This is 1954 now. So look what happens. Who's he surrounded by? What are some of the most iconic lines? We just posted something on Socko magazine about the most iconic lines that come from the state of New Jersey. I mean, I could have been a contender. Bud Schulberg, right? You look at the talent, Sam Spiegel, Carl Madden, Lee J. Cobb, Rod Steiger. You look at this cast and you look at the kind of acting that is now becoming part of film, which is more realistic, more natural, and groundbreaking at that, because of the films that had come before it did not illustrate that style because you had a lot of vaudevillian, you had a lot of theatrical actors who were known from the stage who were unfamiliar with the simplicity of being in front of a camera and the ability to actually say things in a whisper. And Marlon Brando does this in a mumbling kind of style that becomes the American export for great acting, right? So what On the Waterfront did beyond being an incredible story, well shot, well directed, and perfectly executed was that it birthed in itself an entire new kind of film. And that all, again, came from the great state of New Jersey. Now you know why they call it the Garden State.
Right, we grow things. But, I think that's that trend though, what you were just saying about it, like, it changed the way, like, this thing happened here, and then there was no going back. So, I think that that's something that just keeps happening again and again. I mean, you could say that it happened with television, with the Sopranos TV show, never before had that type of show been created with so much, amazing acting talent, pulling you along week to week, shot on location around New Jersey, like, really prestige, cinematic. Before The Sopranos, like, if you were to ask an actor if they wanted to be in a TV series, the answer was always like, "Not this year," like, it was just not something that people wanted to do. It's hard to imagine that now, but it was The Sopranos, and The Sopranos is a New Jersey story above all else that really changed the game on that one.
Yeah, and what makes The Sopranos, I think, amazing, like you mentioned the locations, but just also, like, the fact that David Chase and James Gandolfini are actually from New Jersey, right, is one of the things that kinda makes this show, like, amazing and makes it work. I was even thinking, like, going even forward, kind of after the post-World War II period, what about the role New Jersey's played in the blockbusters? Do you have any thoughts about, maybe a film like Jaws?
Oh, of course. I mean, Jaws, which is funny because we're talking now like on the heels of like the release of Spielberg's new film, which is like just about to happen. But Spielberg was from New Jersey. He lived here for part of his childhood. So that entire story of fearing the big shark on the beach, that's like a story of the shore. The whole story wouldn't have even happened if it wasn't for New Jersey.
Yeah. That's a real life story that birthed from New Jersey that he took and then created this film. I mean, what better birthright for the invention of film is the summer blockbuster from a New Jerseyan. Like that, the pedigree that exists in this state that is unused and kind of unheralded is head shaker because
Yeah.
really when you think about the industry being built on the backs of New Jerseyans and then loaned to California for 100 years only to have this moment kind of boomerang back with Spielberg then showing another massive summer blockbuster. You couldn't write this script and anybody would believe it
I just have
because
to say another word about, Jaws as well, which is Roy Scheider, is from my town of Maplewood, New Jersey, and went to our local high school here, Columbia High School. And when Jaws premiered, it had its North Jersey premiere in our town, in our movie theater in Maplewood, New Jersey, our historic movie theater. It's like 100 years old. And there were lines, like, people can't even believe this now, but there were like lines down the blocks for, like half a mile, like people just coming to Maplewood, see the one place where they could see Jaws in New Jersey. So
And you know why they were doing that? Because they were bringing it to go in the water.
So who are some other famous New Jersey actors?
I was just gonna say, talking about colors, you know that the name of the theater is in Manasquan School. It's the Jack Nicholson Theater. Do you know why it's the Jack Nicholson Theater? Because he went there. So when you think about, like, the people that lived here who formulated the characters, Danny DeVito, like, when you think about these iconic actors and their characterizations and the way in which they looked, I mean, there's a wealth of diversity that has sprung from here. Meryl Streep. I mean, there's so many, forces of good that have come from here. There's an entire Hall of Fame for New Jersey that's built around it. You've got every rest stop is named after somebody else on the parkway. So really can't escape this incredible celebratory humanity that comes in every form.
but I also just wanna say when it comes to talent, like, it's not stopping, like, we always talk about Nicholson and Meryl Streep, but let's look at the past 2 Oscar ceremonies. You had Sean Baker win 2 years ago, he's from Summit, New Jersey. We had Michael B. Jordan win for Best Oscar from Newark just this past year. Like, there's so many there's it's like you ca like, every single film has got some New Jersey in it now. It's honestly, it's not just the talent in front of the camera, it's the people who live here that work behind the camera, it's the sound technicians, it's the editors, the production designers. Like, we are like the birthplace of the talent that makes the movies.
John Travolta, Queen Latifah, Paul Rudd, Chris Rock. We could go on and on and on. There's so many. Michael Douglas, uh, Joe
Yeah.
Pesci.
I was thinking one of my favorite New Jersey movies ever, which we should bring back to the cinema, is, The Station Agent. Do you remember that film? It's like 23 years old, the film. It was made for, like, $500,000, and it stars, Bobby Cannavale, Peter Dinklage from New Jersey, shot at train stations all around New Jersey, and it launched their careers.
It really is an amazing film. I've got to agree with you there. And there's so many others that came from this state. I mean, let's look down the list, from Batman to A Beautiful Mind to Clerks to The Joker, Oppenheimer, and The Godfather. Since the New Jersey Motion Picture and TV Commission began in 1978, nearly 30,000 productions have been filmed here.
New Jersey is the movie industry, and I'll say it plainly as I would be echoing the Wall Street Journal, which just had a story that talked about this, but in every state in this nation on our 250th, birthday, the arts are being, eradicated in almost every state, and production for film and television is seismically down in every single state in this nation, with one exception, and that is the state of New Jersey. And part of that is around this tax credit system that was opened the door to have film return. But the other part, which is different than that story, which has happened in New York and Georgia, Atlanta, New Mexico, these tax credits are great, but they change with political will and wind. In this case, infrastructure has been uh, on a hyper speed, which is that you have Netflix buying land in Fort Monmouth, and they're putting $1 billion in the ground of that space. So there's real texture to this. But it's also where a lot of the best crews and directors already live. So what you have is you already have a built-in kind of infrastructure of talent, but you also have something that's specific to New Jersey, which is when I talk to producers and they say that they called a mayor who then called them back in 20 minutes. That's a very different story than what you've heard in, New York or Los Angeles over these years. So I think that the scale of what is happening in this state, which is 292 acres at Fort Monmouth, and it's an old army base that's due to open in 2028. I actually think they're going to open one soundstage in 2027. Paramount signed a 10-year lease at 1888 in Bayonne. And that state has like the state of New Jersey has something like 70 stages right now. So within a couple of years, that's going to go up by another 30. And I don't really think that you pour that much concrete for that kind of passing fancy.
Yeah, okay, a lot to unpack there.
The remarkable thing about New Jersey is that you don't have to do much to sort of like uncover what's already happening here. Like just the second season of Tina Fey's show, um, uh, the Four Seasons debuted, and it's like set in the Jersey Shore. You know, if you look at the number one box office hit from the past month, Devil Wears Prada 2, two of the stars are from New Jersey. A couple of the scenes were shot in New Jersey. We have Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day opening soon. In the fall, like the most anticipated TV shows, like Camp Crystal Lake, which is like the continuation of Friday the 13th, filmed in New Jersey. The original was filmed here as well. So it's like the thing that's happening in New Jersey, it's like just if you just start looking at the connective tissue, like it is New Jersey to everything that we're consuming and people are talking about, the pulse of culture, the pulse of movies. Jersey is also a stand-in. It can be so adaptable. It can be so many places. You know, we have metropolises, small towns, we have mountains, we have rivers, we have oceans. You know, we don't have a desert yet, but you know, maybe we'll find a way to fake it in one of these big studios. And you know, I think in a day and age when there's a lot of pessimism about the future, young people don't know what they're going to do with their lives. We're feeling like creativity and art is being squashed in so many ways. There's something really beautiful happening here right now, and it's about like ingenuity and it's about talent and you know and it will always have this dose of realism and grit and truth because that's what New Jersey is about. So what better place to be ushering in this like the next wave of cinematic production.
Thank you so much, guys, for such an amazing discussion of the history of New Jersey's central role in the past, present, and future of film. Angela Matusik, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Justin.
And Adam Nelson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's all for this episode of the Garden State Roots podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and please check out our next episode on how New Jersey shaped American sport. And if you want to get involved with what we have to offer, remember to check out our show notes associated with the series. Garden State Roots is digging up some stories.